If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it.
Again, with Josh Hart. He speaks on what could be a lucrative offseason for him this summer. He sat down with Bleacher Report's Taylor Rooks and opened up about his approach to the offseason, saying he will likely decline his player option, but plans to, or at least hopes to, remain a New York Knick. Here is Josh Hart himself.
We'll probably decline that and do the free agency thing. My first free agency I was restricted, and it was ass. I kind of actually cried a little bit. It took like 3 weeks to get it done. I'm like, damn, like, do people want me in the league? Like, I don't think this free agency will go that way. I love New York. I love the team. I love the coaching staff, the front office that we have. Got young guys, draft picks, all that, all those sort of things. So, obviously that would be an ideal place for me to just, resign there and do that. Everything's perfect on the court, off the court, with family, being close to home, doing all those kind of things. So, fingers crossed that, when free agency starts, I'll say a deal will get done, hopefully in the first day or two. I would love for that to be home.
So Josh Hart there making it very clear that opting out is likely going to happen, but that being a Knick is a priority. And there's been talks about that being expected to be the case. And here you got Josh Hart himself saying that is indeed the case. So, in case you forgot, Josh Hart was acquired by the Knicks mid-season trade with the Portland Trail Blazers, sent Cam Reddish, Ryan Arcidiacono, and a Knicks 2023 first-round pick to the Blazers. He played in the 25 regular season that capped the Knicks season and started 5 of the team's 11 playoff games. Hart, again, has a player option worth $13 million. So hearing from Josh Hart there, Tommy, do you think there is any chance Josh Hart isn't a Knick based on what he was saying?
Yeah, kind of as we talked about when they acquired him, when we talked about at the start of the offseason, there's always a chance. Anytime a player opts out and, becomes a free agent, nothing's guaranteed. We had Carlos Boozer promise a blind owner that he would return. And
that was wild.
There's been plenty of situations
in
NBA history where a guy, you just assumed that the guy was back, and it was only a matter of time. And so certainly I believe that Josh Hart is going to be a Knick this season. I think one thing the Knicks can do to kind of secure his services is maybe not guarantee his salary, but give him all the breast milk he would want. Make that part of the guarantee part of his contract. I don't know how that's affected in the new CBA. There might be some limitations on that, but I think that's one thing the Knicks could do.
Yeah, and we've avoided the breast milk conversation, but I do want to bring that up in a second because I do have sound from him in his interview talking about the situation. But yeah, I think, as you said, like anything can happen in free agency. I just think, to me, it just sounds like a handshake deal's already been made.
Agreed.
He's saying that, I hope a deal will get done hopefully the first day or two. This technically wouldn't really be tampering because he's on the Knicks already. But to me, players knowing that a deal could be done the first day or two suggests that there's already been parameters discussed about what it would take. The question,
EJ, are you telling them they have conversations before the officials? That can't be the case. That's allowed. That's allowed, right?
It's shocking, right? It's unbelievable that could be the case. But that is, I'm almost certain, what's happened here. And I'm sure, Josh Hart's his representation over at CAA, they've talked around the league and said, hey, what are these other teams willing to offer? And how does that compare to the Knicks offer? So him saying that, New York's a great fit. I love being here. I love the team. Everything's perfect. It's hard for a player to go that far talking about how much he loves his current situation and then have to sign, in Detroit next season. How do you then, spin the narrative of, well, you said you were in a perfect situation, did you find a second perfect situation? Like you're going through your second option. It's like saying, this is my second choice to go to prom with. That's not really something that the fan base and the next franchise is going to want necessarily hear. So I think he's kind of pigeonholing himself to returning as a Knick. I guess the question I have is, how much money will this end up costing the Knicks? How many years will they commit to? I read John Hollinger in The Athletic. He did a whole breakdown on every player that has a player option or some kind of potential non-guaranteed deal coming up and what they should do. And he thought that Hart may actually end up opting in and then extending from there. So keeping the $13 million he can make next year and signing for something around there moving forward. Is that something you see on the table? What do you think the final numbers will end up looking on a Josh Hart deal?
Yeah, so it's definitely something to keep in mind. Obviously, Hart's, I'm sure he's familiar with his options and all the different scenarios that can play itself out. I'm sure he and his agent have had conversations, but more importantly, I'm sure the Knicks front office is, rechecked and checked and had conversations with with his agents and kind of, looked at all the different scenarios. So yeah, so the Hollander, the one Hollander wrote about, and some other folks have discussed it. This since the Knicks signed him. So the benefit of a so is essentially what it is. Instead of Josh Hart has until the end of the month to opt out. It's basically a mutual opt out of his contract for next season. He currently has 1 year, 12.9 and change on the books.
Yep.
Obviously, he can make more than that in the open market, even if it's just for 1 year, and he can certainly make that money plus a couple more million over multiple years. So it essentially makes no sense for him to exercise that contract and remain in that contract for 1 more year. However, it would make sense if the Knicks, instead of allowing him to enter free agency, tacked on an extension if he chose to exercise that option. So the benefit for the Knicks perspective is that keeps his base salary for the upcoming season below 13 million, which helps him stay below the second apron. And just kind of a big picture view. EJ and I will get into this over the summer, but the new CBA has some interesting language in it, and we'll really dig into the kind of the details of it as we move on in June and July. But essentially, something to keep in mind, and a phrase you're going to hear a lot from us and from informed basketball analysts, is this thing called the separate second apron. So essentially, the new CBA wants to make it difficult for teams. There obviously some teams are going to spend more than others. There's a salary cap, but it's a soft cap as opposed to a hard cap, as we are familiar with that language in different sports, the NFL, etc. There's also a salary floor, which prevents teams from spending far less than their competitors. So ideally, the NBA, you're going to have the high spenders, roughly 20 or so percent above the low spenders. But there are a few teams that that drastically exceed that salary cap. We saw it when the Warriors got Kevin Durant and just basically ran the NBA with their eyes closed for 2 seasons and really diminished the product by making it virtually by making it very predictable. So what the NBA is trying to do is trying to prevent that type of scenario from taking place. In the past, they would have this thing called the luxury tax. You guys are probably familiar with it, where if you exceed the salary cap by a certain percentage, it's dollar for dollar hit or $1.25 per dollar you spend. But that was the only penalty. So in other words, if you had a rich owner, a tech billionaire, for instance, there was the only punitive penalty was in terms of hitting your pocketbook. The new CBA, in addition to obviously the financial repercussions, there's also some additional repercussions. You can't send out once you hit the second apron. So this is another about 6 million above that luxury tax, and once you hit that number, you're essentially hard capped. With a few exceptions. In addition, you can't trade a draft pick more than 6 years in the future. You can't sign players via the buyout market, which we've seen a lot of players get added. Kevin Love, for instance, was one such player that Miami picked up. And there's a couple other things that just that make it difficult. There's mechanisms in place for you can get these really top tier players, but it's difficult to round out your roster. So I say all that to say, if Josh Hart opts into his contract and Knicks sign him to an extension, they keep that $13 million salary on the books for this upcoming season, which makes it easier for them to, facilitate all their other moves and trades. They want to add another top tier superstar. We talked about who potentially that could be if an Embiid shakes loose, something along those lines. It's just obviously you have a player at a lower salary. It benefits you going forward. And it would benefit Josh Hart because he would have 5 years fully guaranteed. I think Hollinger threw a number around 80 million, something along those lines.
480 on the extension.
Yeah, so that's a total of almost 95 million over 5 years, which is probably the high end of his annual basis. Would the Knicks be fully guaranteed? Would there be a team option? Would there be a player option at the end of that? That we'll see. But that's one scenario. The pros for the Knicks would be that cheaper first year. The cons for the Knicks would be extended out 5 years. So when we talk about the annual basis for Hart, I think most folks assume it'll probably be somewhere in the area of 15-ish million to 18-ish million. Hart's going to ask for 20. The Knicks are going to offer 14 the first time they sit down, etc. And they'll probably come to that scenario. If I had to take a guess, I think the Knicks want to keep the years down. I think that would probably be their ideal scenario, as opposed to going out to 4 or 5 years. I think they probably, if Hart is dead set, I want 18, then maybe the Knicks only offer him 3 years. If he's willing to settle for 15 and a half, going up to 16, 17, then the Knicks will give him 4 years. So somewhere along those lines, I think that's probably where they land. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think, and that's why I think, because again, I would not think, I know that him and his agent have pieced this together. So the fact that he's saying that it's likely they will opt out already, to me, that kind of takes this opt-in situation off the table. It would sound like. Now, I don't know. I guess we
could be playing hardball, but yeah.
Yeah, James Harden recently kind of did this with Philly, and he could have opted out and accepted a shorter 2-year extension. And allowed Philly to spend some more money to get other guys in, like PJ Tucker, his good buddy. So
but also allowed Harden to sign the huge contract he's going to sign this summer.
Now he has more money coming to him because he extended on the previous contract. So it's so I don't know that it makes me think, given how Josh Hart was speaking in that interview, that that won't happen, that he won't do it. But you said it could be posturing, maybe that's still happening. But I get the impression that he does want to opt out, and he does want to get paid immediately and not to worry about taking the 13 million and having the rest of the money come in the back end. And I wonder if Knicks end up kind of putting a deal together that is similar to the deals we've seen with the likes of Mitch and Jalen Brunson, where maybe you do have a deal that ends up being a little front loaded, and maybe he is getting 18 to 19 million the first few years, but then that salary, decelerates, for lack of a better term, de-escalates is a better term, as the time goes on. So that may be something you see as well. I don't one thing, Josh Hart's guy remained a Knick. Like, they got to bring him back. They gave him a first round pick for him. We saw how important he was in the 25 games he played in the regular season. We saw how important he was in the Cleveland series. Didn't play great in the Miami series, but he's a absolute glue guy. So bringing him back is an absolute must. And because we mentioned it, and we did a good job, I thought, last week of not talking about it, but because he then mentioned it again, and it seems to be the gift that keeps on giving, this whole Josh Hart breast milk thing. So last week he put out that he had tried his wife's breast milk. His wife just recently had a newborn, so congrats to him and his family. But he put out that he wanted to try his wife's breast milk, and he was interested if other people had this same thought. It confused pretty much everybody who read this tweet, thinking, what the hell is Josh Hart talking about? So once again in this interview, for now, like the third time, he's had to explain what happened.
So 85% of new dads at least wonder what breast milk tastes like. We had family over that day. When they asked me, they're like, have you tried changing breast? I'm like, no, I haven't tried it. But if I ever do, I want the whole charade. I want to be burped. I want to be cradled. I want everything. Somehow I got finessed into doing like a blind tasting. So we had like almond milk, a creamer, and breast milk. Tried it, obviously. And it was vanilla flavored almond milk. That's how it tasted. I literally took the blindfold off after I tasted it. I'm like, damn, this is actually like not bad. It doesn't taste bad. I was like, this got to be the breast milk. And like, I just knew, because like it tasted the best out of all of them. So then I was just like, I'm gonna tweet it and just see what people think.
So basically what Josh Hart said was,
my actions don't require any defense. In the same situation, I do it again.
That was Batman from Justice League Doom, an awesome animated cartoon. So I am not married, one. Love my girlfriend, though, of course, Andrea, I love you. And I don't have a kid, so I that's twofold. I'm not on the Josh Hart train. But my good friend Tommy Beer is married. He does have kids. So do you have any idea what Josh Hart is talking about? And do you relate to him in any way?
Okay, listen. The reality is, yes, I agree with him that everybody has at least wondered what it tastes like. However, I've never set up a blind taste test. I've never went that route. I certainly don't want to be cuddled and coddled. I think he a little bit too far in that one. So yes, I can agree that obviously there's some curiosity involved there. But I think that's where I drew the line personally. I didn't cross the threshold.
Yeah, Josh Hart. I feel like he may have some things he's got to work out, given some of the commentary that was going into why he wanted to do this, and it's a little odd.
Yeah, but let's he may have been in the presence of Taylor Rook, so maybe his head was spinning.
That's true.
We'll let him slide there. But yeah, I mean, just big picture before we move on. I totally agree with EJ. They got to bring him back. Ideally, you want to get him on as good a deal as possible. Yes, he didn't shoot well in the Heat series, and you saw the flaws in his game, which were exposed when you play a team 7 times in a row over an 8-day span, 15-day span. Night in, night out, from the moment Josh Hart arrived to the Cleveland series when he was a star in the Cleveland series. Incredibly valuable contributor on the Knicks. Led the Knicks in plus minus a post All-Star break. Was 7th in the NBA, tied with Anthony Davis and Desmond Bane in terms of plus minus. He was plus 150 in his 700 plus minutes of action. The only Knick that was above plus 86 was Emmanuel Quickley, who was plus 117. So again, the Knicks have plenty. I know we think that they need shooters, and yes, they would like you. Behoove them to add shooters this offseason, but keep in mind, Knicks finished 3rd in the NBA in offensive rating last season. They finished 19th in the NBA in defensive rating. They need defenders as well, and Josh Hart is arguably their best perimeter defender. Going up against Jimmy Butler's not easy, etc. But again, what he brings to the table, and let's also, the Knicks now have a superstar. They have a guy that you're going to build ideally a championship team around. And for the first time in a long time, the Knicks have to worry, how do we keep this guy happy? If Julius Randle was a great player, but you don't have to worry about, you hope to have Jalen Brunson for the next 7 years of his career, and you hope that he leads you to the promised land. So you want to make that man happy. Obviously, there's a close relationship between Brunson and Hart. So keep that group together. Kind of get some faith and build some front office equity with the guy you're eventually gonna have to sign to a contract in a couple of years. So I think for all those reasons, Hart wants to stay. The only way the Knicks will let him go is if some team offered him some exorbitant $20+ million.
Yeah, he gets $100 million contract from somebody.
Then you have a decision to make. But the reason I feel really confident in Josh Hart returning to the Knicks is because the Knicks are going to offer anything that's reasonable, and maybe reasonable plus X. And I think Josh Hart would prefer to stay in New York and would accept something reasonable minus X from the Knicks. So I really think it's only a matter of time before they come to that number.
It's one of those situations. I think you may end up seeing it with the Warriors and Draymond Green. We'll see. But it's one of those situations where he means more to the team that he's on currently than he would mean probably to any team that would try to sign him, even if they did try to overpay him. So for all those reasons, I agree. I think Josh Hart does remain a Knick. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest podcast ventures. Links will be in the descriptions. And as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.